Good evening, all. I'll get us started. I am Janet Pruitt, and I am the co-chair with Bill Blanchard, who at the last second could not be here tonight, of the Kirkland Alliance of Neighborhoods, or you see the acronym CAN, K-A-N, pretty frequently. And so anyway, I'm kind of winging it tonight, but I am so happy and honored to be welcoming these two people here tonight, and it just shows how appreciative they are, or supportive, I guess is the better word, of our neighborhoods. They're supportive of them, they're approachable, they're inclusive, really a great team. And I think we have them to thank right now, too, for leading us at such a, seems like a very stable, thriving, inclusive, positive environment here in the city right now. And they are constantly reaching out to us as neighbors to help them with their outreach, and we are very appreciative of that and happy to help. And I thought of a couple of stories about them, not stories, but backgrounds that maybe not all of you know. Just a couple of things about the two of them. One is Penny, Mayor Sweet, she's the person that actually began our 4th of July celebration. And this, she told me tonight, was 20 years ago. And she has stayed in that role. Yeah. She brought us our fireworks. She brought us our parade and has continued to do so every year since. So, and then our city manager, Triplett, when he came over from Seattle, and I didn't ask you how you got lured here, but you left a pretty exciting position over there, if I remember. And so anyway, he got lured here somehow. Maybe you can explain it. And the first thing he did was he was already quite a fan of the railroad line and of converting that to pedestrian use, transit use, whatever it will end up being. So I think probably one of the first things you did when you got here was plunge us into the opportunity to buy that corridor for Kirkland. And we were the first people, Kurt was the first person to lead that effort on the east side. So we bought our portion of the corridor well ahead of other communities on the east side. So we have Kurt to thank for that. So I don't want to take too much of their time, but these are two people that we appreciate and are grateful for and happy that they took time out of their very busy schedules to show up and talk with us tonight. So we're going to do, the format's going to be, Penny is going to say a few things about, well, you can tell us when you get there anyway, and Kurt will follow. And then we'll turn it over to all of you for questions. So it is my pleasure to introduce Mayor Penny Sweet.
Thank you, Janet. Good evening, and thank you so much for inviting me to present my 2019 State of the City Address to the Kirkland Alliance of Neighborhoods. I gave this presentation in February to the Chamber of Commerce, and I've tried to update it a little bit to reflect a more neighborhood-like perspective and the fact that we are almost 4 months further into 2019. We'll see how that goes. The good news is that as your mayor, I have not broken anything significant so far. So I would like to begin by introducing my colleagues. Councilmember Kelly Curtis, I still can't get used to it. She's new and she's fabulous. And then I would also like to have the city staff introduce themselves. And part of the reason for that is we couldn't do the amazing things we do unless we had the dynamic staff that Kurt has brought to us. So, Jim.
Good evening, everyone. Jim Lopez, the Assistant City Manager. Nice to see you.
Kelly.
Kelly Stickney, Communications Manager.
Sherry.
I'm Sherry Harris, I'm the Chief of Police.
Dave.
Neighborhood Rec, Neighborhood Services.
Steph.
Stephanie Cole, Assistant City Attorney.
And Mike.
Oh, yes, Mike Connor, Video Wizard.
And as I told Joey earlier, She practically works here. She's at the front desk all the time. First face you see. It is a tremendous pleasure to present this speech. I am still both honored and humbled to have been selected by the City Council to serve as your mayor. I want to thank my colleagues for their faith in me and repeat the promise that I will do everything in my power to be worthy of that trust. I also want to express my profound appreciation to my dear friend and our newest state representative, Amy Wallen, for 9 amazing years on this council. We came in with Kurt. And an incredible 5 as our mayor. Amy set a tone of elegance and grace in her tenure on our council that I believe has become a part of this council's culture. And in her first session in Olympia, she continued her service to Kirkland particularly, and to the whole state, because she was the mayor of Kirkland at the same time that she was also the mayor of Munchkinland in Studio East's production of The Wizard of Oz, and I hope you all saw her. We sent her off to Olympia in sparkly green slippers on the emerald green path. She may not be in Kirkland anymore, but Amy's heart still is, and God knows she continues to work very hard for us. Under her leadership, Kirkland became one of the best places in America to live, work, and play, and we have the award to prove it. And because of her dual tenures, I'm going to be including some Ozian references in this speech. Each and every one of you has contributed to making Kirkland an exceptional place. As a former neighborhood chair myself and a longtime business owner in Kirkland, I was proud to give this speech in front of the Kirkland Chamber of Commerce this year of all years, because our chamber marks their 100th anniversary this year. And this year, we met our all-time membership high of over 500 members now and growing. This year of all years, because Edgar Martinez was finally elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame, something we've all been waiting for. And to honor Edgar, I'm going to bring out some of my favorite Yogi Berra quotes. This year of all year, because, as Janet reminded us, Celebrate Kirkland will be producing our 20th consecutive 4th of July extravaganza in just a few weeks. These are historic events. Kirkland Urban is beginning to open its doors as we speak. 2 new streets, Park Place Lane and Urban Lane, both with working stoplights, are in place. The Shake Shack will open for business right across the street from Peter Kirk Park. Purple Cafe will return to downtown. A fabulous dumpling shop called the Dough Zone will attract patrons next to a new Mud Bay pet store. Also look for Cafe Ladro, Home Street Bank, Bright Horizons Daycare, and many more places to come. The Village at Totem Lake will complete its first phase this month, including the East Side's first Salt and Straw gourmet ice cream shop, made famous in Portland, and will get more famous in Kirkland, and featured in last Sunday's Seattle Times with their skillet cornbread and candied nettles and pine nut flavored ice cream. Meet me there for one of those. We will also see 203-degree Fahrenheit coffee shop. 203 apparently is the perfect temperature for coffee. But they will be serving several hundred new apartments and the new parking garage. Thank heaven for the parking garage, because with Ulta, the Rack, Ross, Trader Joe's, and Whole Foods open already now, as Yogi Berra would say, nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded. Cranes have sprouted up everywhere, as we have 2,400 units of housing, 530,000 square feet of commercial space, and 315,000 square feet of institutional building under construction today. In the development pipeline, we have another 2,965 housing units and another 1.2 million square feet of commercial and institutional improvements on the way. Ladies and gentlemen, just like the fireworks over Lake Washington on the 4th of July, the state of the city is booming. I have lived in this community and owned the Grape Choice and been a member of the Chamber for almost 35 years. I have never been more excited or seen more opportunity for our city. There is a whole new Kirkland vibe. and I am so confident about our future. Google is doubling down on its investment in Kirkland, and technology and aerospace companies are flocking to our town. Yogi also said, you don't have to swing hard to hit a home run. If you got the timing, it'll go. Well, we've timed it right, and we have hit a home run. We are transforming into a city of energy and innovation, and moving on to a grand salami. However, we cannot keep Kirkland, an Aussie and Emerald City on the lake, if we don't have the brains and the heart and the courage to meet the challenges that come with the successes that we're enjoying. These challenges include the impacts of such explosive growth. First, we must meet the obligations we have as a city to serve all these new structures and the people they bring. We need to provide critical utilities for water and sewer and garbage and recycling services. We must engage with the region in critical discussions and decisions regarding transportation infrastructure and transit access. We must face up to the difficult regional conversations about the future of our water supply and the use of reclaimed water. We must do the difficult work of siting solid waste transfer stations and deciding where and how we will dispose of our garbage and recycled materials. And that's just the fun stuff. We must also invest in parks, open space, and recreational opportunities, and in infrastructure such as roads, maintenance, sidewalks, bike lanes, and transit improvements. These new developments are bringing great companies and are creating great jobs, great homes, and great amenities. They are attracting new immigrants, new families, and new visitors in great numbers. But with these new people come new traffic, new congestion, a high cost of living, a lack of affordable housing, and an increase in homelessness. We must find a way for those who serve our community to be able to live in our community. The bank tellers, cashiers, the folks who work in our shops, our teachers, our plumbers, our caregivers at our healthcare facilities, they all deserve to live and have families approximate to where they work. Too many of our police officers and firefighters live in North Bend and Duval and Monroe. That's where you're going to be safe when the big one hits, and we cannot be safe if they don't live closer to here. It should not be normal or acceptable to us that working class men and women must commute 50 miles or more per day to work. As most of you know, I own the Grape Choice wine shop with my husband, Larry Springer. And like for so many small businesses, this is a personal issue for us. Our own employees must often work multiple jobs just to live here, or they can't live here. These challenges affect everyone, and they cannot be solved by just a few. A community is not shaped by those who show up, who just show up. It is also shaped by those who don't show up and those who can't show up. We must engage everyone. If we do, I believe that together we will succeed where other cities are struggling. We will succeed because we have the brains to do it. Every 2 years, the City Council identifies opportunities and adopts a city work program designed to seize those opportunities. Kurt is going to be up here very shortly with copies, I hope, of our 2019-20 city work program that was approved by City Council in February. That handout includes a checklist of past work programs that Amy has shared with you in these talks in the past and what we have accomplished. The work program tells you where we will focus our time, our resources, and political capital over the next 2 years. Every challenge that I have mentioned is addressed in some way in the work program. Each of the 12 ambitious initiatives will be described by our city manager very shortly. But I encourage you, when you get them, to review them carefully. Eleanor Roosevelt said it takes as much energy to wish as it does to plan. But the city work program is not just wishful thinking. It is our plan for what we do and how we do it. According to Yogi Berra, if you don't set goals, you can't regret not reaching them. But we generally meet ours. Our businesses and our residents should use this document to hold us accountable, to make sure that we reach our goals, and that as a community, we have no regrets. Kirkland must also have the heart to be successful. Helen Keller said, "The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt by the heart." Michelle Obama tells us success isn't about how much money you make, it is about the difference that you make in people's lives. I love Kirkland because I believe that we feel with our hearts and we care about making a difference in people's lives. We proved that time and again in 2018. Almost 16 months ago, on February 14th, a gunman opened fire at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, killing 17 students and staff and seriously wounding 17 others. Our community response was to come together. We did not simply get angry, although many of us did get angry, but we got engaged. Groups like Kirkland Safe and Kirkland Indivisible and the Kirkland Alliance of Neighbors came together along with faith groups and neighborhood groups and individual moms and dads and students and you and me, and said that that is not who we want to be. We strive to be a safe, welcoming, and inclusive community, and we are willing to do the work to make that our truth. And we proved it. We had a difficult but thoughtful community conversation about gun safety and school safety. We acted to reduce the chances of gun violence from happening here and to help those who are suffering and in pain. We identified the need to invest in mental health services, domestic violence programs, suicide prevention programs, gun safety training, mental health professionals, and new community police officers and school resource officers. We learned that we needed proactive policing to combat drug crimes, property crimes, and shoplifting, which often involved weapons. And as a community, we showed our true heart when we overwhelmingly passed Proposition 1 last fall. And now, nearly $2 million every year will flow to these programs to help those who need it and make our community safer. In December, the council also adopted a budget that made our largest investment ever in human services, housing, and homelessness programs to help those who have been left out of our region's prosperity. We proved our heart again when we learned about the incident at Kirkland Menchie's in November. As a community, we were devastated to learn that an African-American man left the shop after an encounter with our police, feeling that he was unwelcome in Kirkland based on his race. Again, these same groups and others came together and said, this is not who we strive to be. Again, we are acting to live up to our ideals of being a safe, welcoming, and inclusive community for all people. So in February, Council approved funding to provide diversity training to all Kirkland police officers and all other city employees, including the council. The council also approved funding for a partnership with Leadership Eastside to facilitate community conversations with all Kirkland residents and businesses on race and diversity. Today, I finished a 3-day Leadership Eastside Race and Equity seminar, and I encourage everyone in this room to embrace the conversations that are coming in an effort to begin the process of healing our racial divide. I truly believe that Kirkland is a community that has the heart and the commitment to ultimately be a model and lead the way for communities like ours to be renowned for our efforts and performance in inclusion and equity. But even the smartest brains and the strongest hearts are not always enough. To tackle the challenges facing Kirkland today, we must also have courage. We must have the courage to take the actions we need to take, whether they are popular or not. As Rosalind Carter once said, anyone can take people where they want to go. It is much harder to take them where they don't want to go but need to be. Taking our community to where it needs to be will require courage. And the best example of this is our housing crisis. To provide homes for our children, our seniors, our workers, and those who are homeless, we need new housing of all kinds and in all places. We must build missing middle housing like condominiums, duplexes, triplexes, and mother-in-law apartments. And this housing must be built in livable, walkable neighborhoods close to jobs and served by transit. But too often, this needed housing is opposed by those who live nearby. Our attempt to create housing at the Houghton Everest Shopping Center was a failure. We missed the obvious opportunity to create new housing right next to the Google campus, Metropolitan Market, PCC, and Northwest College. We must find the courage to act no matter how difficult it is. Eleanor Roosevelt said, "Do what you feel in your heart to be right, for you're going to be criticized anyway." The great news is that we are not alone in this effort. One of the most inspiring moments I have had during my short time as mayor was when I stood with other East Side mayors and Microsoft when they unveiled their $500 million investment in low-income and workforce housing in this region. As Brad Smith from Microsoft announced, we have had 40 years of success here. It is time for us to give back. The East Side is uniquely poised to partner with Microsoft on this effort, and particularly Kirkland. Through ARCH, a regional coalition of housing, or for housing, we have the staff teams and the decision-making processes to make housing happen quickly, especially near light rail and bus rapid transit that will come online from the ST3 ballot measure. Our city manager, conveniently, is the current chair of the ARCH board, and ARCH is already working to convert this pledge to housing in our communities. I would like to end where I begin by thanking my fellow council members, each for their own love affair with this city. To paraphrase Yogi Berra, being a council member is 90% mental and the other half is physical. And my fellow council members really do give 140% to Kirkland. We are so fortunate as a city to have such a talented team of elected officials who all have the hearts, the brains, and the courage to act on our behalf. Deputy Mayor Jay Arnold has been the Swiss Army knife of our council. He goes anywhere, does anything we need him to, from regional smart growth policy leadership to legislative advocacy, and his relentless attention to the King County Climate Collaborative, assuring that Kirkland stays on the forefront of these incredibly important issues. Councilmember Dave Asher, who is retiring after 20 years on this council at the end of this year, has been the driving force behind the pursuit of our legislative agenda. His leadership has provided tens of millions of dollars to the city for transportation and housing projects. His favorite thing to do is to find other people's money in pursuit of our objectives. Councilmember Toby Nixon is our incredibly talented municipal code expert and parliamentarian. Every city should have one, almost none do. He knows a lot about everything, just ask him, and he has really been helpful in guiding us through tough policy discussions. He is nationally recognized expert on public records and government transparency and a firm guide for Kirkland's public safety accountability. Councilmember John Pascal is passionate about delivering responsive service to our community in effective and efficient ways. His expertise helps us deliver quality of life infrastructure such as road maintenance, sidewalks, bike lanes, parks, trails, and open space. He guides our Parks and Public Works Committee in assuring the right projects get prioritized and done. Councilmember Tom Neer, a second-generation council member from the Neer family, has provided an entrepreneurial creativity to our planning and economic development thinking, and has been an enthusiastic, nonpartisan catalyst for change. He has kept us focused on the cutting edge as we develop our smart city systems and plan for a world with autonomous electric vehicles wherever they may operate. And finally, our newest council member, Kelly Curtis, who in her short tenure has already demonstrated a significant ability to process the incredibly complex issues we are dealing with. Her experience as a member of the Houghton Community Council, the Park Board, and the Housing Strategy Work Group laid a bedrock that she is quickly building upon, and she's a delight to work with. Together, this council is an all-star lineup that would give the Boston Red Sox a run for their money. I am so proud to be part of it. Finally, Yoga said, it's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. But I will leave you with my prediction. We will stay this course together. We will overcome our challenges together. Our booming present will light the way to an even brighter future. And when we're all done, everyone in Kirkland will agree that there is truly no place like home. Thank you. And now, City Manager Kurt Triplett.
Follow that. So, thank you, Mayor Sweet. So, Janet, to your question, that was how they got me to come. When I was interviewing for jobs after my time at King County, just an opportunity to meet that council in 2009. It had people like Penny and Doreen Marchione and all the rest. They were all dedicated, committed, talented, amazing people, had just this vision for their community, and it just made me want to be part of it. And so I'm so grateful they chose to hire me, and it's just been fabulous. Yes. So the mayor referenced quite a bit of our tasks as she outlined both the opportunities and the challenges that we're facing. So what I get to do is walk you through the work program and just give you some highlights about the things that we're going to tackle in the next 2 years. So hopefully you all have a copy of the handout. I think we have some extras on the table if anyone wants some. The slideshow is going to cover it, but there's a little handout to follow along. And as the mayor said, included in that handout is a summary of past work programs. And one of the things that's kind of neat about looking back is you can see how we listed things and we got them done, and we listed things and we got them done, and all of them have built up to this current present that we have today. So I'm going to start. So I have 17 slides. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes. And we have a representative here from the Houghton Community Council, Neil Black, who was able to watch this presentation at the Chamber today, as well as Kelly Curtis, so they get to hear this again. They can make sure I get it right. So as you have all seen this word many, many times, but I just always want to remind you that this is what the City Council truly uses as its touchstone, which is what we created as a community when we were doing our comprehensive plan update, is what kind of community do we want to be? And what we heard from our businesses and residents is we want Kirkland in 2035 to be like the Kirkland we have today, which is a livable, walkable, green, connected community. And so that's the vision that we have and are using in our comprehensive plan. And all of the work program elements that we always adopt always flow from that. And as the mayor said, Kirkland is booming. I think you may have a copy of the major project sheet, but that may not be something that I actually had you guys bring down. Okay, so that was handed out to Chamber of Commerce, but I'll make sure you'll get a copy of it if you want. This is the summary of it, which is good. What this shows you, this is live from our May update of our planning website. You can find a much more detailed vision of this, but what you can see here is the bottom line is really the key, these totals along here, which is we have 2,400 units in construction and about 5,300 units of housing somewhere in the development pipeline, and almost 3 million square feet of office, commercial, residential, and institutional development happening. And much of that institutional development is our schools, Lake Washington School District, past and current bond measures that just passed, and so those are the construction elements of that. It's a startling total. It's a historic total. It's very exciting because it brings with it new opportunities, new services, new restaurants, new places to go, but it brings with it some challenges. And the work program is really set up to address those challenges and meet the infrastructure, all of the growth that's coming. If all of these things happen, and they aren't all guaranteed to happen, they could change or evolve, but if every one of these things happen, by our calculations, this would be just this development alone would bring another 7,600 new residents to Kirkland and about 4,500 new employees.
Is there a date to this chart?
This chart is our May 2019 chart. So we update it every quarter, and so this is the very latest update. The time frame for this, so these are either in construction or in the permit process at some place. So they'll.
Since maybe 2014, 2015, since when?
Oh no, this is since 2016. Yeah, since 2016. Yeah.
Through 2016 through when?
Through now, through May of 2019.
2019.
Yeah. So, great questions. So that's a lot. That's almost a 10% increase in population should these all happen, and that doesn't account for all the other changes that are going on around. And the 4,500 new employees could be an understatement based on what's happening. So The interesting thing to know about this is that this is about 62% of the growth that we plan for between now and the year 2035. And so it's happening a lot faster, and it's happening than we expected. But the really nice thing about it is it's happening the way we want it, and it's happening in the places that we want it. And I think this is a really important point because while it's explosive historic growth, we did plan for this. In years 2013, 2014, 2015, the city went through and updated all of our comprehensive plan documents, all of our other planning documents, and we said, what do we want our city to look like and where do we want growth to happen? And that was the conversation we had with all of you. And what the community said back is we really want you to focus this growth into urban centers at Totem Lake and at downtown, and we want this growth to occur in mixed-use, dense buildings that are places where we have work and retail and housing, and we want them to be in places that are served by transit. And in return, what we'd like to do is preserve our single-family neighborhoods and our environment and our parks and our quality of life. And so that was the plan, and even though this growth is happening a lot faster than we expected, it's happening in the way we want it to, and it's happening in the places that we want it to. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a lot of work to do to catch up with this, because it's moving a lot faster than the city is usually able to keep up with. So we're going to need some help from the community. So the first item on our agenda is to improve fire and emergency medical services. And this is the second part of our two-part community safety initiative. The first part was Proposition 1 that we were very grateful that our voters passed last year. And that was the police part. This is the fire part. And one of the things that we need to do to evolve our fire department is to serve these new structures. So I have this picture deliberately that has the fire. This is sort of current Kirkland. It's garden-style apartments that can be reached by our current engines and ladder trucks. But the development that you saw before, the Kirkland urban development, what's happening at Village of Totem Lake, that's a whole new style of development for Kirkland. So it needs new equipment and new training, and it's going to need more firefighters and more EMTs as our population grows. And so, since public safety is one of our most fundamental issues, the City Council has said we need to have a conversation with our community about a ballot measure in 2020 to expand our existing fire stations and build a new fire station in Totem Lake and to look at new fire staffing. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to bring together a group similar to our Parks Funding Exploratory Committee that we did in 2012, which is going to involve, we hope, all of you and also the business community and others, to have a group that we can educate about the fire service and the EMT service, and we can ask what should go on the ballot and for what and for how much. And if that group makes a recommendation to the council, this could be on the ballot in November of 2020. But I should say there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end, so each of these could be a very, very long topic in and of themselves. I'm going to move through them fairly quickly. As the mayor mentioned, we were so grateful that this passed. This is Proposition 1. So one of the things we know we need to do is demonstrate to the community that we are implementing what you asked us to do. And so we have a matrix of all the Proposition 1 programs, and we're moving very quickly to try to implement them. Police chief and I, every one of our meetings that we have every month, we talk about where are we on staffing, especially with school resource officers and the PROACT unit. We're moving quickly through getting those positions in place. We hope to have them in the fall and by the end of the year. The City Council invested about $250,000 in Proposition 1 money into human services programs for mental health services and domestic violence and teen mental health programs through YES and HopeLink and others. So we're very excited about that. And so you're going to see a lot starting to play out in the fall at the beginning of the year, and we want to make sure that we come back to you and we're always accountable for the $2 million a year that the voters gave us when they passed Proposition 1. The next big thing we got to do is we need to make major infrastructure investments to keep up with this growth and to serve these areas actually with transit. So there's a couple big projects here. The one I want to talk about first is new on-ramps and off-ramps off of Interstate 405. And so this was actually one of the signature initiatives that Dave Asher did as a state legislative advocate. When the new transportation package was being developed, we were going to ask for study money for this intersection, for these on-ramps. And Dave said, we should ask for all the money. So $75 million. And we all said, there's no way we could ask for $75 million. But he said, no, we have to. We did, and by gosh, we got it. So these ramps are actually going to be built by the year 2023. And there'll be a new southbound off-ramp off of I-405 to 132nd, and there'll be a new northbound on-ramp at the same place. And those two, rather than having signalized intersections, are actually going to be the new traffic circles, which are much safer for pedestrians and bicyclists and also make the traffic flow much better. And we had a lot of work that we did on that to make sure that all that's true, and we're very excited about this project, but that's with the state of Washington. Our own personal project is the Totem Lake Connector. This will help complete the Cross Kirkland corridor. So this will be a $15 million bridge that will go over Totem Lake Boulevard at 124th, and it's going to link Totem Lake and the village of Totem Lake to downtown, and also allow us to continue working with the county to extend the corridor all the way up to the north, up to Woodinville, and all the way up to Snohomish. And I think, as most of you know, they've already started to extend it down south, so you can now go all the way into Bellevue. And in the King County Park levy that's going to be on the ballot in August, there's additional money to develop the East Side Rail Corridor. But our piece of this is to create this beautiful new Totem Lake Connector. It's going to go out to bid in the fall, and we hope to have it done in the next couple of years. We're also making a series of intersection improvements all throughout the Totem Lake area. This is an example of one that's by the Jack in the Box. As I mentioned at the Chamber of Commerce, I have teenage kids, so all of our markers are where is fast food. And so this is the Jack in the Box intersection, right across from the 7-Eleven. So, but we're making a whole series of investments to try to address traffic congestion and pedestrian safety. And so that's, the City Council wants us to stay on top of that and make sure that we are delivering on these projects. There's over $47 million of projects in the next couple of years that are happening just in Totem Lake alone in parks and street improvements. And that doesn't even count the $75 million there, or the next one I'm going to talk about, which is a $350 million project that we're working with Sound Transit and the state of Washington on. So our next initiative is to make sure we partner with Sound Transit and King County Metro to deliver the transit that we need for all of this growth to be served. As I have mentioned in the past, the city is not going to be able to build its way out of the congestion and traffic that comes with all this growth. The number one thing we hear about from people that is the response to the growth is the impact that it's creating with traffic and congestion. And so our strategy, again, to go back to that livable, walkable, green, connected community, is to make sure that we serve this congestion by making the trips available on transit and multimodal investments. So bicycles, greenways, new sidewalks. But the centerpiece of all that is we're able to get in the Sound Transit ballot measure a brand new bus rapid transit station at 405 and 85th Street. So they're going to tear down the current one and they're going to completely rebuild it into this amazing 3-level engineering marvel that they've created. This thing will probably win national and international awards when it's done. And so the bus rapid transit system will actually be able to come off to the middle section, and we were able to get Sound Transit and the state of Washington to actually add hot lane access points for the city of Kirkland, which we only have right now at 128th. So you'll be able to get on the hot lanes going south or going north from the same place. And then the general purpose lanes that are going towards the water to downtown is that 3rd level down below. So we've been working really hard on this. This is, again, something that the City Council gave us additional resources to hire staff, which is what we do with the work program. It's the focus and the priority of the city. And so with that extra staff, we were able to make these improvements to the basic plan that Sound Transit had come up with. What I also want to point out is all of this area that gets freed up when those little loop-de-loop on-ramps are gone, in addition to where the Lee Johnson Chevrolet dealership is and where the Costco is, the City Council has said, we really need to think about this thoughtfully and plan for this whole area. And so what they've asked us to do is create what we're calling a station area plan. So to really do a focused look over the next 2 years on what should be in those locations. So what kind of development, how can we create more dense mixed-use development that can really take advantage of the fact that this bus rapid transit system and all of this transit is going to be there. So thanks once again. The City Council gave us a lot of money. We have almost $500,000 to begin that effort. It'll probably take us 2 years. This will probably be one of the biggest planning efforts that we've done in the city, with a focus on making sure we get this right, because this is going to be the next big thing for the city of Kirkland after Totem Lake and Kirkland Urban. As the mayor so eloquently discussed, there is a lot of folks who obviously are not experiencing the prosperity that much of us are, and we want to make sure that we never forget that and that we invest in taking care of their challenges as well. So I'm very proud of the fact that Kirkland is building the first women and family shelter on the east side. We're doing this in partnership with multiple faith-based organizations. with Arch, which I'm a part of, and with the other East Side cities. And so this will be built in Kirkland. If you look in some of the past work programs, we said we're going to site one in Kirkland, and then we did, then we said now we're going to build one, and we are, and then we said we're going to operate one. So we've been working on this for a long time. We had a very inspiring groundbreaking in April, and this is actually now through the permit process. It'll be under construction later this year. It'll probably be done next summer. And so it'll be the first women and family shelter on the east side, and we're very, very proud of that for people experiencing homelessness. Now one of the biggies. Another thing we're very excited about, the whole issue of the missing middle housing, and how do we create opportunities for our seniors to stay here if they want to sell their home? How do we create opportunities for students to live here? How do we create housing opportunities for teachers and for some of the other workforce people that were mentioned by the mayor? And so the city council challenged us to really be aggressive about changes to our code to allow these things to happen. So right now, going through the Planning Commission and the Houghton Community Council have been two parallel zoning discussions, one about creating duplexes and triplexes throughout the city, and the other about creating accessory dwelling units, so mother-in-law apartments, either detached or attached to homes. And how can we incentivize those, and how can we try to make sure that they get built, and what are the barriers, and how can we remove those? And so both of those zoning changes are coming through the various commissions, and they're going to be coming to the council later this fall. And we'll be having that discussion. Linked very strongly to this is a series of design guidelines so that as these things get built, they will look and feel like the rest of the community. So a good example is the zero lot line housing there. That's actually a duplex on my right. I guess it's your left. And trying to incentivize things like the cottage housing that's currently allowed. But how can we get more of these built in the city? We had a very exciting forum just last night, here yesterday, about accessory dwelling units and how to make them happen. And so we learned a lot, and that's part of what we're going to be moving ahead on. And we're really hoping this could add hundreds of units throughout the city that could really be useful in helping us solve our problem and give people starter home opportunities. And as I said, just multi-generational housing to allow people to stay in Kirkland who want to be here but won't be able to afford it if we don't have options like this available. Near and dear to my heart, keeping the park system beautiful and spectacular is our amazing maintenance team. They're out there basically from dawn till dusk. And when we made the bigger city with Kingsgate and Juanita and Finn Hill, we almost expanded our system by 50%. But we didn't expand the places where they have to put everything by 50%. So for about 5 years now, we've been looking for a maintenance center that can house the bigger needs of the Parks Department. And so we finally found it, and we purchased the Office Max last year. Sorry if you bought your stuff there. We couldn't find too many locations. But why we wanted this is not only is it large enough, but we're able to just remodel the existing building, which saved us a lot of money and actually was a much better, more sustainable use than building something brand new. And as you can see here, it's right next to the Cross Kirkland corridor. That's the path you see going under 405. And so we think we have a lot of really neat ways that we can make those things work together over time. And so that was one of the reasons the council was also really interested in this. But when this is complete, it's going to be about a 23,000 square foot facility that will make us much more efficient and save us a whole lot of money in how our parks operates, and creating a pretty neat opportunity to partner with the Cross Kirkland corridor for some cool ideas in the future. Once Parks moves into this, it actually allows the Public Works site to expand. So Public Works is also constrained right now, and they'll move into the park space. And so we will finally have a Justice Center, a Parks Maintenance Center, and a Public Works Center to serve this growing and thriving community. So it's been a long time coming, and we're very excited to almost be there. So one of the things we know we need to do is keep up with the recreational opportunities of all of these new people and employees that are coming to Kirkland, as well as the ever-expanding needs of the people who are already here. And buying new parkland is just not much of an option. It's very expensive. There's just not a lot out there. So we have to use what we have more effectively and better. And so we have in our capital project budgets significant expansions of the park system in places that we can, and trying to make sure we utilize what we have better. So two of the things that we're going to try to finish in the next 2 years is the Juanita Beach Park expansion. That phase 1 will finally be done. We'll have a new picnic shelters. We'll have a new bathhouse. The last one was built in the 1950s, so we're excited about that. And then we're going to be completing our first phase of Totem Lake Park in the next 2 years. So That is actually building a park and a bathroom, and then an extension of the boardwalk, which will finally allow you to go all the way around the lake. There's a couple other phases that will come later, but this is a $7 million investment we're making in creating a park in and around where all of this new development is happening at the Village of Totem Lake. And I'm pretty excited about the sort of mini Green Lake idea where you could walk or jog all the way around the lake for the first time when this is completed. And then on 132nd Square Park, we're actually going to be putting artificial turf on the existing field. And we're able to do this in a really unique and effective way because we also won a state grant for almost $4 million to put a new stormwater system in the park, which will help us stop flooding in Totem Lake and other places. So we're going to have to tear up the whole park anyway and put a giant vault underneath there. And because we're doing that, that takes about half the cost of what it would take to put an artificial turf field in. And so we're able to do this at about half price, and it'll actually almost double the ability of us to use that park for ball field use and pee-wee soccer and other things. And so since we know we can't ever replace parks of that size, making sure we can get more use out of them is a big focus of us in the next couple of years. So this project might take a little bit beyond the 2020 timeframe, but it's going to be started before we get to the end of the year. I know near and dear to some people in the audience's heart is the Sustainability Master Plan, and so we're in the process of working with the community to figure out what this is. This is sort of the heart of being green and livable. So we have lots of pretty progressive environmental policies and a whole series of plans, but there's no one place you can go to say what is the agenda of Kirkland and what is the set of tasks and how are we going to tick them off and when will they be done. And so that's the goal of the Sustainability Master Plan, is when we're finished, you can go to one place, you can see what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, and why we're going to do it. And we're having a really extraordinary outreach to the community to find out what you all think should be in that plan. We know what we have, but we also want to know what you think. And so when that's completed, we hope it's going to truly reflect the community needs as well as the staff recommendations. Almost to the end here. This is the Safer Routes to School Action Plan. So as this growth occurs, we have more families, we have more kids, we have more traffic. And while that's a good thing to have more kids and people in school, we know we want to keep them safe. First and foremost, we want to keep our children safe. And so what we're going to do is, for the first time ever, is actually adopt a Safer Routes to School Action Plan for every elementary school, middle school, and high school in the city. And we're going to have a document that says, what do we need to do to make sure that this school is safe? And so before, we've looked primarily at safe walk routes, which is basically sidewalks. But we're going to be now looking at everything, things like speed zones. Do we need safety cameras? We're going to be looking at how does the school queuing system actually work? Do we need to make a change to a queue in an elementary school? Can we work with the school district to reconfigure that? We're going to be looking at things like, hey, if most of these kids get on the bus 20 blocks away, but where they're getting on the bus is a place with no sidewalk and it's not safe and they're on the side of the road and cars are passing in the dark and in the rain, should we build a platform in that area? So we're thinking that a lot of really neat, small, but important investments will come out of this that will make our kids safer at every one of our schools in Kirkland. As all of us move more and more into technology, cities are the same. We'll be able to provide great services for folks, but what we've learned is you have to make sure you invest in your own infrastructure at the same time. So we've been providing a lot of neat new online services for our community, and we've unfortunately neglected our own internal IT infrastructure a bit. And so we've had a few glitches, I will say, where our system shut down. Nothing outside the normal realm of other cities, but our city council said we need to make sure that we really invest and make sure that our system is resilient, that it can withstand normal everyday shutouts, but it also can withstand earthquakes or natural disasters. And so we're making a very significant investment in making sure our technology is in the cloud and that we're ready for anything and that we can access it from anywhere and not lose anything if something bad happens. And then this is the final slide on the work program, and this is the annexation sales tax credit expiration. So we've been planning for this for 10 years. When we annexed the territories of Juanita, Finn Hill, and Kingsgate, the state of Washington gives you a tax break. They actually allow you to keep the sales tax that you would otherwise send to them for a period of 10 years. So we've been able to keep for 10 years, $4 million a year that we've been using for police and fire and parks and other issues like that. Sadly, that expires at the 10th year in 2021, and so when that happens, we start to see a gap between revenues and expenditures. It's not the only reason for the gap, but it's a significant one. And so we've been planning for finding ways to have new revenues and to think differently about some of our services for a long time. But the City Council wants to make sure we keep this at the forefront of our planning over the next 2 years. So how do we make sure that we protect the things that people really care about that are in our budget while maintaining our AAA credit rating and making sure that our services are sustainable now and into the future? So this is going to be a long 18-month conversation with the council. We're going to be bringing them lots of creative ideas, looking deep at how we provide services and whether we should provide services, not just for what we do today, but also how we're going to serve all of these new businesses and these new residents. And one of the ways that we're going to get information on how to do all that right is with you, and this is my last slide. And so Janet talked about this at the very beginning, the civic conversations, or as we like to say, the CAN agenda that you've allowed us to have for the last 6 months. The City Council adopted a new operational value of civic engagement. And we all have been committed to that, but we've been using fairly traditional methods like workshops and open houses, and we haven't had a lot of people coming to those, and that's not unique to Kirkland. It's a problem for everybody. And so once again, the council challenged us to do better, think differently, be innovative. And so Jim Lopez and his team, David Wilbrecht and others have been working on a whole new system of engagement to include things like town halls, to reach out to the Kirkland Alliance of Neighborhood, to put things online, to summarize them in videos, and to really make sure that we can get the information that we need to make sure we're adequately reflecting what the community wants. And I'll just give you a sense of the scope of this. Normally, if we have an open house, for example, when we had our Totem Lake open house a while back, we had about 12 people who came to the Totem Lake Park open house. And that's a $7 million project that's in the middle of a giant, dense center that a lot of people care about. With the focus on off-leash dog areas, with the new strategies that Jim and his team put in place, we're actually able to get 1,600 people to engage in a survey or show up or provide information. And so it gives us a whole different set of scope and scale and nuance and policy choices that comes out of that information. I'm sorry?
City's going to the dogs.
Yeah, there we go. City's going to the dog. And so we'll still have the ability for people to come in person. We'll still have workshops and things. But again, the council has said we have to be able to meet people where they are. And that usually is online or on a phone or in some other way. And so this has been phenomenally successful. We're pretty excited about it. And the feedback that we've gotten from all of you has been really helpful to make this a success. So that is my overview of the City Work Program. And very happy to have a chance to be here. Thank you for having us. And we're happy to answer questions on any of these.
And remember that Saturday we have one of the civic engagement.
Yes, on Saturday, one of our big civic engagement conversations is on our community connections map. So where and why should we have connections on our map for fire reasons or pedestrian and bike connections and other things. So, and also the safer routes to schools will be on there as well. All right, how do you want to MC this? Do you want me to?
How would you like me to do it? Just ask if you've got questions
Should we just
and
call on people?
I'll acknowledge people. Yes.
What's the timing on the Totem Lake Park?
The project's supposed to go out to bid this fall, and we hope to get it constructed by the end of 2020. It might blend a little bit into 2021 before the actual boardwalk itself is done.
And that's considered a different project than the bridge, or it's all?
Yeah, they meet up, and the Totem Lake Master Plan is designed to complement the bridge. So when we're all finished, there'll be a seamless connection. But right now, there's already a sidewalk that goes along the park and the lake to where the boardwalk will start, but there's no connection on the other end. So we want to make sure we have the connection first. And in the end, we'll build another better boardwalk to replace the sidewalk. But in the meantime, we want to make sure you can go all the way around.
Well, I think also, 10 years ago when we brought the Urban Land Institute in to talk to us about how to get interest in the Totem Lake area, basically they said, make there be a there. So that's when we bought the trail, that's when we bought the park. I mean, that's when all of that came together. And as people begin to move into the Totem Lake housing that is almost done, they're going to need park access. So it's a priority.
I have a suggestion. Since we started with Totem Lake, are there other questions that relate to Totem Lake? Maybe we'll take those all as a group over here, and then Heather after that.
So if there's mention
option of light rail or something, something else on the corridor at some point, how would that be handled on the loop-to-loop, over the?
Do you want me to take that?
I'll let you do that.
So the Cross-Kirkland Corridor Master Plan has a reservation of space for transit, whether it be light rail or buses, a 50-foot wide basis all along the corridor. And so where the bridge starts and goes up and over is not in that space. So what would happen, in theory, if there was a Sound Transit 4 someday, so not anytime soon, but is the bus system wouldn't go on the bridge at all. It would go parallel. And in fact, it would probably turn on and go up on the other side, probably by the McDonald's, and go up to the parking lot. So it probably wouldn't even go over that way, but it could. But we've already reserved the space, and it wouldn't share the bridge. It would go across the streets.
So back when we had For the Love of Kirkland, the second project that people wanted to see the most was rain sales / shade sales for playgrounds, which is very architectural design to basically shelter people in our wonderful misty weather whenever they want to use a playground. So has this been considered for Totem Lake as part of the playground structure that's going in? Since we're already investing so much, doesn't it make sense to make this like the pilot of that, because it's accessible by the trail, it's going to be open to 4,000 new units all in the area, so.
It's not too late to look at that. So thank you for reminding us that. We will follow up on that.
Will there be a way to go from the trail to Totem Lake without going across streets and lights?
Sort of. You'll have to cross. So if you, what's the name of the Italian restaurant there?
Veloce.
Veloce. So the closest you'll be able to get is where Cafe Veloce goes to Whole Foods. You'll have to cross the street there at some point. So you won't be able to just automatically go straight into the Totem Lake without crossing some street. But any place you go, you'll have a really nice new sidewalk that's 10 feet wide. You'll have a new light and a crossing light that you could go on. But you'll be able to go all the way around the lake without having to cross anything, without having to cross any traffic. But if you want to cross over into Totem Lake itself, you'll have to cross the street at some point.
And crossing that street now is really, now that it's a nice, narrow street with sidewalks, is a piece of cake.
So it's one street?
One street, yeah.
120.
Feel free to start changing the topic if you want. Yes?
I just have one comment that when I've gone to the Totem Lake shopping area, well, first of all, the parking is free, so that's great, because that will make you feel like you can go there and park and do all the shopping you want. But I've also seen that there's very little room for pedestrians to walk. You have to be watching for cars all the time. It doesn't feel safe. And the parking spaces are also very tiny. It's very hard to maneuver into. That's just my comment.
Yes.
So we have two questions from online.
Oh,
One is
gosh.
from Kelly Ostrom, who asked, what is the plan to address traffic going into and through downtown? And the other is a traffic-related question as well from a Julie Bott, who's asking about traffic on Juanita Drive and on Pinhill.
Stick with traffic for a while.
Okay.
Transportation master plan.
Do you want? So I'll tackle the first one first, which is the traffic coming in downtown. So first I have to say there's no simple solution, and traffic will get a little bit worse as we grow. And it's not just because of us growing, it's also Bothell and the whole east side and Redmond growing. And a lot of the traffic is coming from other places and coming through. So the Puget Sound area is going to double in population over the next 20 to 30 years. So it's not going to be simple to solve it. So what we are doing as the city is we're really focusing on making transit work and making bicycling and walking work. And so we're investing in new bike lanes and sidewalks. And if you've been down on Forbes Creek Drive, right by where Forbes Creek Drive and 98th 100th come together, you see the new red bus queue lane. So what we have done in the city of Kirkland, again, thanks to the council, They gave us money to do a transit implementation plan. And what we did is we actually invested money to say, where are pinch points where we can make transit move faster and become a better choice for people? And so one of the key pinch points was at that location. And so what will happen now is the bus will actually be able to come up, and then the separate light for the bus will be able to move ahead of the traffic and go first, and then the rest of the traffic will come after it. And so it's going to save several minutes every time a bus is trying to go down that. So there's other locations similar to that we're looking at. So the right turn lane by the Wendy's, my kids would say, or by the old Arco building, that turns right onto 124th. That's another place we've identified that if we can get a right turn lane in there, it'll make transit, the 255, work much faster. So our primary strategy is all of these ways we can make regional and local transit work a lot better for our residents, to give them choices to get out of their cars. But single-family cars, it's going to be not better anytime soon.
And we do have improvements planned for Totem Lake, or for Juanita Drive. We've already implemented a number of the bike plans, and I'm not sure where it is in the capital plan, but there are plans to improve the roadway connections and make it safer for biking more than anything else. And again, we will have increased traffic. I mean, getting people out of cars is really going to be an important element of growth across the Northwest.
I'm going to insert a question about the downtown mobility, and that is a lot of people have asked, how are we going to get to this BRT bus rapid
talk about
transit
the path.
station? And I know you've had some creative ideas, but what do you think is going to be realistic?
Go ahead.
So in the ballot
This is
measure,
wet.
I know, I'm sorry, I spilled. My bad.
There's no wires.
So in the same ballot measure that built the intersection, the city of Kirkland got in that ballot measure dedicated bus lanes to go from 85th to downtown. So we'd basically widen 85th Street to provide dedicated bus lanes. Both we and Sound Transit, looking at that, said that may not be the most efficient way to do it, because there's about $47 million in the ballot measure to do that. But that's not yet a particularly congested area, and it's not a particularly efficient way to move people back and forth. And so what we have worked on is something we're calling the 85th Street Transit Way, which is a dedicated parallel path, an 18-foot wide path that would go from 6th up to 85th. And it would be a dedicated shuttleway and bike lane and pedestrian pathway that would allow us to run, we hope, eventually, autonomous electric shuttles that would just go up and down and go from Kirkland Urban and the Transit Center and meet the buses up at 85th as they come off the freeway.
Kind of a new funicular.
Yeah, basically. And so it doesn't have to be autonomous and electric to start, so it can be any kind of shuttle or van system. And so we're actually in negotiations with Sound Transit right now to complete that. Our estimates, which we did, show it's probably about a $30 million investment. So we're proud of the fact that we think we can give them a better investment that will be more effective for a lot less money. But we have not yet convinced them to do that, and it's actually in the end their decision. So.
Is this mostly on
I know
transportation
you're
now?
biker, so how would you feel about trying out the shared lane with an autonomous vehicle yourself as a biker?
So well, we'll have to see, right? So the reason it's 18-foot wide is that we probably end up painting or separating the lanes in some way.
Right.
Yeah. So the goal isn't that it's just a free-for-all. We would actually then find ways to make sure we kind of get people a sense of where to be.
Along that same path, some of my fellow CAN members aren't here, but at our meeting last night, there was a very large discussion about the bike paths. It's fine that they're painted, but that they're not feeling safe because there's no physical divide barrier, and that the safety that would provide. So I feel like I should voice that on their behalf.
There actually was a study done in Seattle just recently that demonstrated that was a fact. I'm sure you guys talked about that last night. We're gonna get there. I think these are initial steps.
Right.
John Pascal in particular is fairly strident about separation for bikes. And we'll do it probably target area by target area as more and more bikes are hitting the road. And that will help.
Main arteries first.
Yeah.
And more probably will happen if they're safer. Yes.
I hope we will continue to try to get people to walk.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that far from Sixth up to where that point B, is it?
Yeah, the transit way as we are we've designed it is ADA accessible grade, so it should be, it's about a 6% grade. So it's a little bit of a hill, but it'd be very,
But for a
very
lot of
gentle
people,
hill.
that's very walkable.
Yeah.
And that links me to another issue, the safe getting children to school. One of the safe ways to get children to and from school is to stop having their parents drive them
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
And I hope that will be part of that plan.
That's actually
It is,
that's
absolutely.
Teach that generation how to walk.
That's a key sub-element of that plan, is actually to increase the number of kids who walk and bike to school, so.
And get all those cars off the streets and it's just ridiculous around the schools.
Yeah.
All those people waiting there with their cars running.
That,
idling, and
that point is even in the video. So
Yeah.
yes, you're right
The
on.
gentleman in the back.
How's the city gonna balance, there is a lot of traffic and congestion, the housing and all those things. We can see a lot of people moving in, and the reason they are moving in is because of the Kirkland and the resident of the Kirkland. My concern is that the developers come and go. So if the city's not careful, they're gonna leave a mess and they're gonna go, they don't care, because they don't live in Kirkland. And then all the residents have to deal with the consequences of all those things. Whether it would be, all the, for me, one specific thing was this. I live in Kirkland, I've been living in Kirkland 40 years. Actually, I worked with your husband, Larry, with a sidewalk by A.G. Bell, because my
Okay.
kids are 35 years old, but they went to A.G. Bell, and there was no sidewalk. And the buses would come out, and the kids just jump on the ditches and everything, and all those things. So finally, we have a sidewalk, I really appreciate it. The other thing is that I live in that street 112, and there is maybe 20 houses that are still on septic. I don't know, I might be surprised to some of you. And the reason was that there was no connection, nothing, and the manhole was not deep enough for these people to connect. To my surprise, behind my property, there is a main sewer line, behind my property. A developer from 116 with 27 housing units
Oh, right.
is connected to the sewer. The city wanted me to give him a permit to go through my property to connect to the sewer behind my house, but I cannot connect behind my house, because I have to go and connect to the northwood in the street. I mean, to me, I'm just looking as that, if my house was 50 unit developers, would I get a permit? I mean, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I want the city to be aware of the concern of the citizens, so all these developers don't come in and with all their resources, whether with the money and manpower or council or whatever they have and connections, to work on the project and get the approvals, and then leave and then have all the citizens deal
And I
with
hear
that
you
problem.
saying that you're not getting quite the same response from the city that they do, or access, and so I
Yeah.
don't know.
So
That is correct.
let's follow up on that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a card if you want to,
Thank you very much.
and we can follow up on that particular issue.
By the way, that great wine store, the old one that you had, I mean that was just the most beautiful thing. I would go in and Larry had this golden retriever.
We still
That
have them.
old wooden
Nice.
store, just like I said, I love Kirkland. I mean, that was just totally Kirkland.
Thank you.
Great.
Over here.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I should have.
I just want to mention that it's nice to have announcements in the Kirkland Reporter about city events. And I really appreciate, a couple of months ago, it mentioned a app. Any resident
Yes.
can complain about a road situation. And since that article, I saw lots of potholes repaired.
Yes.
Success.
What's that called, David? I should know that.
It's called
Oh,
Our
Kirkland.
Kirkland.
Our Kirkland, that's
Yep.
right. So you can look that up. It's right on the homepage for the city, right, where you can click on that and report an issue or ask, and find out, it'll get, somebody will see it and then get back to you about how to approach that problem.
Exactly.
But you've been waiting.
Okay, my first question is, how do you keep all that in your head? I don't understand how you do that.
Many, many meetings.
I want to make I wanted to make you aware of the road improvements that are going on. Every year we go through road improvements and we get new streets, new roads, redo the roads. And you take 124th Northeast, okay? It's being repaired again today. I think you just showed a picture of it. Well, the last time that was repaired, we, the people that drive on it every day, had to drive over for 3 years, okay? And they just barely refixed that, I think. But they're doing it again elsewhere. And I just like, as a taxpayer, right? I just like to say that's our money.
Yeah.
And they get paid for a smooth road, not to leave all over the road. And the other thing I see that they're doing around new construction today, when they're building these new things, they seem to think it's okay to make a big wide driveway, even if that widening of that driveway sticks out into the traffic lane. So I'd like somebody to pay attention to that, because what they're doing is they're encroaching on my drive. If I'm in this lane, and this lane goes around the curve, and they've decided to move this lane out like this, all of a sudden I'm driving up on the curve. And I see that a lot.
Are those the ADA improvements?
No, just normal driveway widening, not just ADA.
So a couple thoughts on that. One is that the next study session of the council this Tuesday, we're actually providing them with a big update on pavement condition index and our strategies for how do we pave streets and why do we pave streets. And addressing exactly those issues. How long do we leave something undone? And so we've been getting better and better about that, and the city council's given us a lot of resources to add our new milling machines and pavers and things. So that's not happening anymore, hopefully. The 124th project is going to be paved fairly quickly. But one of the things that's really interesting, and you'll hear if you watch the study session, is all the work that goes into thinking about when a street gets paved, because there's so many things that happen underneath it, whether there's a water line or a sewer line or a private developer that's going to connect to it, or a fiber company needs to put something in. And so we're constantly challenged by the fact of, hey, if we pave this now, we have to tear it up and put a water line in it. So there's a big meeting of our staff that happens once a quarter where they go through all of the projects and say, we're about to pave this. Is anybody about to come do something on it? So that's what happened at 6th Street. One of the reasons 6th Street has taken so long is we had a series of utility projects that happened one after another. But some of them we actually brought forward almost 5 years just so we could stick them in there so that we could go ahead and pave it. So we really try now to focus on that and make sure we get stuff paved as quickly as possible. The bulb out, I would think, but I'd have to tell me where it is probably actually designed for that. Almost all the bulb outs that we do are actually designed to make things safer for pedestrians. So they're a deliberate intrusion into the street that slows people down. That may not be the case what you're talking about, but that's the reason you do see these big bulb outs on sidewalks is to slow people down.
I'll send you a picture.
Yeah, please
Yeah,
do.
and if you see more particular examples of this, go to that My Kirkland portal.
Yes,
on the
send
homepage
it in.
of the city,
I
and
don't like
ask
to
about
complain
it.
a lot.
What?
Yeah.
I don't like to complain.
Snap a picture of it.
What does the Juanita Beach Park bathhouse, what does that consist of?
It's very similar to what's there now in that it'll have changing rooms and showers and bathrooms and also have a concession area and a place for the lifeguards to do stuff, yes, and then
Just
rentals.
upgraded?
Yeah, it's just upgraded, yeah, much nicer, more modern.
From the 60s.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I think you guys mentioned the Greenway Network. Is there a timeline for that?
You said, how do I keep it all in my head? I will admit, I don't have that one in my head. I know it's supposed to start. Dave, do you know?
Yeah.
Phoning a friend here.
The opening of the first Greenway, I believe, is happening in early fall. And so we're in kind of early stage of talking with the Southwest Bridle Trails Neighborhood Association about seeing if we can do some sort of celebration or something around that to acknowledge it.
Can you explain what that is to people?
I don't know, sir, if you'd like to.
It's more of a system of transportation where biking and walking is prioritized over driving. And I think the speed limit's closer to 20 miles an hour instead of 25 for most roads. It's about the extent of my knowledge on that.
Well done.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering, is there going to be another city hall for all like there has been in recent years?
There is, in fact, going to be another City Hall for all, and we're actually trying to pin down the date for that. Do you know when, Jim?
We're in October.
Yeah, we're shooting for October, so we're going to make that an annual event.
What would you like to see with that?
Well, it was nice to walk around this building and ask different people in different departments. But it's, like I mentioned, the Kirkland Reporter, if you have an article about it ahead of time,
Hmm,
then I
great.
know. And I knew about this meeting from the Juanita Neighborhood Association.
Good.
Because I
We're trying.
You're gonna say-
The other thing you all might want to do if you aren't already is go to the city website and sign up for the city update. Is it still called city update? On the,
Yeah, so we have the weekly email newsletter.
It's really
which
informative.
some of you signed up for, out on the table out here, and you're welcome to sign up for that on your way out. I know a number of you are already on it as well. And then, the city's Facebook page and Twitter account are also good ways to find kind of really like breaking news about what's going on. So,
We'll be sure to
get that in.
So,
yeah.
I'd like to add to that, if you go to the website and sign up for the city news update, you can also individually go into anything that the city's working on and sign up for an update on that particular project, like the Greenway. You can click on that and get updates to that every time one comes out.
That's true.
Very good, thank you. You know,
Excellent.
nobody's brought up housing. I feel like we need some help from all of
you want
you
housing questions?
about housing.
No.
Especially the Market, Northwood, Highlands neighborhoods are doing their update right now. And so it's very important that we hear from you about how can we fit in. You know, you need to help us. It has to go somewhere. So we can guide where are appropriate places in our neighborhoods to put some of these additional housing types in that'll fill that missing middle gap. So, housing.
You ready?
Oh, this sounds great.
I've got 3 or 4 questions that help me to understand a little bit better where Kirkland is going with housing development. First of all, thank you very much for
Check
having
out
it.
affordable housing or housing?
Housing. in general.
Housing, yeah.
It doesn't matter to me if it's affordable or if it's forceful. Thanks for having this. It's great.
Of course.
I went on the Kirkland, City of Kirkland website, and I found your growth goals for the 20-year plan to 2035.
Yeah.
And it said something like, I think you're targeting 91,000 people in Kirkland by 2035.
That's the result. It's not the population's not a target, but the housing that would result in that is the target. But yes, it's about that.
There were two statistics on that page. One was population, there were going to be a total of 91,000, and to provide that, there were going to be something like 8,000 more, 9,000
Right.
more housing units.
Yeah, like 8,600, I think. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And I was wondering, where did those numbers, where did you get those numbers?
So those numbers are given to us by the state through the county. So there's what's called a countywide planning policy and the Growth Management Planning Council,
That's growth management.
and they divide up targets and assign them to cities, and that's the target we have to.
One of the things you mentioned was, you mentioned in the presentation today that we're about 62% on our way to the 20-year goal. I've heard 70, 75% by various city councilmen.
Right.
But that's okay. But it looks like Kirkland is going to reach its 20-year goal in about 8 years. And I was wondering, what is going to guide development housing and when you've reached your 20-year goal in 8 years?
It's a great question.
I'll try it. In my remarks, I think, I don't exactly know what's going to guide us 1,000%. What I know is we have a housing strategy work plan, and we're going to continue working that work plan. We also will continue to attempt to be a place where people who work here can live here. I think it's 80% of the people, is it 80? Is it that high? 80% of our population drives out of Kirkland.
Yes.
People commute.
Doing work. Yeah.
People do commute, and we know the consequences that we pay because of our transportation infrastructure. So I think, all right, as I recall it, and we've had a lot of discussions about this, but there's a lot of opportunity within the city for the development of small living facilities adjacent to homes. The way that Mercer Island has approached their housing infrastructure needs is they have encouraged the development of ADUs on properties across the island. So so we're looking at that as an opportunity for a senior, like my husband and myself, instead of moving out of our home and having to find our one-story Rambler, could have built a small facility in the back of our house. People are doing that now in Kirkland with ADUs, on their garages and that kind of stuff. So I think that's some of the infill that we can do.
So one of the things that makes me wonder is, okay, the Growth Management Act, great, I'm with the Growth Management Act. And, but it sounds like Kirkland is going to go beyond what the Growth Management Act asked Kirkland to do. It sounds like you have some what I call qualitative goals.
Yes.
For example, from the council, I hear things like, we need to build housing here. We need to build a certain type of housing. We need to build housing for certain types of people. And and I also heard the council say something, we don't like to miss an opportunity for building housing. There's no limit to what you can do with this approach. That kind of scares me. There should be.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So the mechanism by which that conversation will happen is we're required by state law and the Growth Management Act to update our comprehensive plan every 8 years. And so we finished in 2015, and we have to do it again in 2023. We could even do it earlier, but we have to do it again in 2023. And that is the time in which we'll have the conversation with the whole community about how much more growth and where after, if we meet our targets, which it does look like we probably will.
And this is not unique to us. The entire region is growing at this pace.
One of the things I noticed, I went up, I did some searching, and it's all out there for,
Thank
you can find the Growth Management Act webpage. You can see what the projections are for that one. Interestingly, population in King County is actually declining. It's actually been declining for the last few years, and it's going to continue to decline until 2021. In 2022, population is projected to increase in King County by 20,000 people a year until around 2035, at which point it slows down again. One of the questions this might be a silly, stupid, but I did a little thing. Kirkland represents 4% of the population of King County. Is it Kirkland's goal to take on 4% of the growth in the county, or we're not really bound by that, or is that even the plan?
So what we did is we met what the proposed targets were, is what you have to demonstrate. You have the capacity to absorb your target. So the 8,600 units you're talking about is the target we've been given. We have not had a conversation as a community about would we do more or something different than that, but that is what would happen in the comprehensive plan update. So we don't have a goal of hitting a 4% target, but we were going to have a conversation in 4 years.
Two more things, thank you, everyone. Just two more things for your indulgence. One of the things I heard, you spoke about aggressive changes to code for missing middle. This is sort of a qualitative. But you also have said, and this is the same thing, we're going to preserve single-family neighborhoods. I don't get that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that in the Bridle Trails area, my neighborhood, Bridle Trails, you guys are not only trying to allow, but you're actively encouraging ADUs, duplexes, and triplexes. How is that consistent with preserving the single-family neighborhood?
Are you talking about the rezone of any particular area? I mean,
No,
was that the Bridle?
This is on your guys' radar.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So there will be a little change. So I'll just give an example. We had a person, Cole Peterson, who's a nationally recognized expert at ADUs, who came and spoke to us yesterday about Portland. And Portland has about 600.
So that it's closer to the angle of your head.
Sorry, thank you. And it was so good what I just said too. Now I have to think about it. No. So Cole Peterson came and he spoke about the most successful place in America that's doing accessory dwelling units is Portland, and they have about a 2% amount of ADUs in their single-family zones, and so they're extraordinarily successful. So while we are creating the opportunity, and we do use the term aggressive about creating new duplexes and triplexes and ADUs, what it means, and the example he gave, is that means one house out of every 50 may be a duplex, or one house of every 50 may have an accessory dwelling unit on it. So you're not talking about a complete change in the way a single-family neighborhood looks or feels. But what it brings, and this is, I think, where the council really cares about this, is it brings the opportunity for you to live and stay there in place because you can't afford to sell that home and buy something else in Kirkland, or to have your kids live there. So.
Just FYI, I live in Bridle Trails. We have 4 condominium, what do you call this, condominiums in the area, and plus, 5 blocks away from the Bridle Trail Shopping Center is a condominium city, 601. You go look on the board. There's lots of available rent, buy, for sale. That is, I do not believe that is currently the situation in Bridle Trails. If you want to sell your house and move into something a little bit smaller, I believe the opportunity exists today. And I've heard, so one last question. It's about neighborhood associations. As I try to understand housing and how housing happens in Kirkland, I understand that it all starts with the neighborhood association creating a neighborhood plan. Sounds good, gives the residents a chance to have a say. But in the last 9 months, I've seen proposals before the city council for rezones where the residents are not happy. And I just wonder, where do things go off the rails? Where do we go from residents' input to residents saying, no, 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 don't do this? Thank you very much.
I'll take this one. Okay, this discussion is an old discussion, and it started with the council working on business districts, right? Bridle Trails has one, Houghton has one, we've got one to look at up in Holmes Point, we've got Kingsgate, and we look at those areas differently. Those areas are served by transit. They are generally hubs where people can do a small amount of shopping. Those are also target areas in our mind for where you would want to concentrate growth along bus lines. So the Bridle Trails discussion was about just that. And when I said in my remarks earlier that I felt like the failure of the zoning at Everest Houghton was a failure of ours, it was because that was an ample opportunity for us to put a concentration of housing close to services, shopping, transit, the corridor, the college. So it's those kinds of things that we do talk and think about. We do listen to the neighborhood. We had a good conversation with the neighborhood around that process. But we preserved, Bridle, those areas. Most of the concerns that were coming about Bridle Trails were from deep in the neighborhoods that have not been affected by where we decided to where we decided to upzone it.
Now there's going to be the duplexes and triplexes and ADUs. I just want to mention, with Bridle Trails, it wasn't an issue of the residents saying no development. They were saying, go ahead, build housing there. They objected to what I observed, what the Houghton Everest Neighborhood Center, through the Houghton Community Council, was able to say no to, which the Bridle Trails residents didn't have an equal amount of protection, so they didn't get a chance to prevail in this. They don't like where you take these shopping centers and increase the residential density and increase the height so that it's really different from the neighborhood around it. And they were happy with housing at the current height, but you guys wanted that. You guys wanted it all. You guys weren't backing off. Just like a Continental Divide, they had a proposal. Hey, back off a little bit. Give us a little space. You guys went full speed ahead.
And I think
Well-
Bearswade has explained that pretty well.
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is we are responding or attempting to respond to what is being presented to us as a bit of a housing crisis. So when we see these opportunities, we are going to move in that direction. And sometimes that's upsetting to people. You know, for so many years, every time we had a project, somebody would say, not here, put it in Totem Lake. And I mean, I heard that for the first 8 years on the council.
When you're 62%, 5 years into your 20-year plan, seems like you got a little room to.
The conversation, I think, is going to be at the next comprehensive planning
And
process.
right now, for the Market Norfolk Highlands neighborhoods, there's some places that we can put townhouses, row houses. Can we put some, there's these big corner lots, unfortunately, most of those are already developed. But where you could put a duplex or a triplex that would look like a single-family home. I mean, ways to fit it in. I know 3 different people in the neighborhood, right in my neighborhood, that are about my age. They are building ADUs, and their families are moving into their house, and they are able to stay there, close to family, and where they've always lived. And yeah, right there on the same property in the ADUs. So, I mean, there are places, I don't think every house should have one. I certainly don't agree with that.
Oh, no, I'm
I mean,
not
within
saying
reason,
that.
There's some great uses for it, and so if you keep.
ADUs seem to deny. ADUs seem like they do preserve the character of the neighborhood.
Actually, that's like you mentioned, because in my house, the lot is pretty, like, over 14,000 square foot. My daughter, that used to go to AG Bell, you know, now she's married, got kids, she's 34 years old, and she wants to buy a house. Actually, she wants to buy a house in Kirkland, because she loves living in Kirkland, and she has put 3 beds in 3 houses. The last one she put escalating clause, $50,000 over asking price. She still didn't get it. And there was 16. And she would love, to be honest, she says, Dad, I would love if you built something, you know, have a rambler. And then, you know, when you guys get older, you want to live to be a smaller one. The same scenario. But my concern really was that every time I wanted to do, I said, oh, it cost me like almost $100,000 to connect in the sewer.
We're going to check on that.
Go. I said, it's just behind.
Who should he talk to?
I'll follow up with you.
I mean, that is exactly what it is. You know, preserving and people, it creates community with, you know, rather than my daughter lives somewhere else and commutes back and actually she lives in Seattle, comes, you know, commute back and forth. I mean, that would kind of cut down on taking the kids to the daycare, I mean, just right there. And so it would preserve the community like the Kirkland as we know.
So we're going to follow up on your sewer issue, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Stripes.
Well, I agree with you. I think, you know, you spoke well on the need for affordable housing and how that can reduce the transportation problem. I agree with Penny on, we need affordable or low-income housing, and that'll help people be able to work closer to where they live. And I also agree with urban planning, which is building growth centers and not just, you know, sprawl. Even LA is getting better, you know, with these, to be the sprawl example. But, you know, we need, and that was, when I first came here 30 years ago, there was a 2020, Vision 2020, and they talked about Kirkland as being on that corridor. So I think the growth in Kirkland is doing what it's supposed to do. I have one concern over ADUs because in Market neighborhood, there's variances granted and encouraged that, you know, mother-in-law apartments. And in Market neighborhood, no one's, there's a few that are being rented, but they're just building the accessory mother-in-law apartment to increase their property, you know, their value of their house. So that's a problem. I'm happy to hear that in other places, you know, they're actually being rented, but, you know.
And hopefully more and more will be eventually, but anyway, I'm not.
And I don't know how to solve that problem, but it's.
I don't know how you solve that either. I mean, some of our neighborhoods that have a deeper penetration, like in the Norkirk neighborhood, actually down on the downtown side, there's a lot of houses with ADUs and those are rentals.
And on the north side.
Ninth Avenue, all of my
Right,
neighbors, we
yeah.
all have ADUs. My mother lives in our ADU over our garage. My sister, our house is large enough because of the variance that my sister actually occupies the basement with a kitchenette. So we have 3 families on a large single-family property right next to downtown, and that's how they afford to live here. Otherwise, they couldn't. So I'm strongly for the ADUs and the aging in place. It
Done
creates-
appropriately. Yeah, that's, and done appropriately.
Yeah.
And we're trying to
Maybe
figure out
requiring,
what
you
goes
know,
wrong
if they get the
sometimes.
variance that they have to rent it for, you know.
Or, well, I mean, a family is, that it needs, encouraging that it's occupied, not rental. I mean, obviously, I don't rent my property to my mother, but it's occupied by, so encourage
It's a living space, yeah.
occupying the property that's being built, yeah.
And eventually, hopefully, these places will get occupied. They're there. Someday maybe they'll get used the way we really like to see that.
This stands for accessible development unit, right?
Accessory dwelling unit.
Thank you, great question. Yeah. Accessory dwelling.
Also, mother-in-law.
Yeah.
I don't know, this may not be the forum for this, but is the city of Kirkland doing anything about property tax relief other than the 19th century statewide thing that I think is $35,000, which when you fill out the form is a saying, you're building, and I realize that, you like to see the city profits when somebody is forced to sell because you've got your building fees, and then usually that property is gonna go up in value. You're gonna get more of a cut of the property taxes. But, you know, there are people that live there as long as Penny and beyond. Not everybody is in the same financial as Penny is, but, you know, I just wondered, is there, the city gonna do anything? I've heard, one more thing.
Sure.
I've heard for like 6 years, you know, even from the King County Council, oh yeah, we know about it, but we're not gonna do anything about it.
So the good news is we're trying, and there was a small advance in property tax relief for seniors and veterans. Our Senator Moncadinger was the prime sponsor on that. The city of Kirkland, when we adopted our state legislative agenda, we prioritized that as one of our top priorities, was to create property tax relief. It's a very challenging issue at the state legislature, hard to get the votes. Senator Dinger's leadership got a change through, and that was, all the issues you raised were the issues that were raised. So we are very supportive of that as a city. We're on record as that. We went and testified for that bill. We would continue to advocate for additional changes to that bill to make it even more expansive. So we totally agree with you, because allowing people to stay in their homes is one of the best ways you can create affordable housing, right? So it was on our strategy
You
list.
get relief now, you're living in a tent.
Yeah.
Right. And Larry is working hard to try to get the legislator to move around reevaluating the entire tax structure.
Because we're not, you know, we're not
Right.
Eastern Washington. I mean, it's
Right.
like the Great Divide.
Absolutely, but we have a tax structure that penalizes people on single incomes or fixed incomes. And most of the legislature recognizes this. It's coming up with sort of that magic recipe that includes, the state of Idaho has a system that could work for the state of Washington, which would generate something like $3 billion more in revenue, but would be tax relief, because what it is it uses many taxes. So you pay lower tax everywhere and a very low sales tax, which is why our taxes are so very regressive. And I think there's a lot of energy in the legislature to have that conversation, but we get polarized with partisanship.
Thank you.
Regarding tax relief, I may be wrong about this, but I have heard that there is a way for people to get tax relief who are living in a neighborhood that's upgrading. And they can
That's
stay in their
Seattle
homes, however,
gentrification.
when they die, that they get taxed for what they didn't pay. Is this true?
I think it's 6% per year on what you don't pay.
Okay, so you're not really getting relief. you're
It's a
just
tax
getting-
deferral. So under state law, it's a tax deferral. And so, yes, it has to be paid at the end when that person. So the King County Assessor has a very good website that has a lot of information on tax relief, because that's the main place where your property tax assessments happen. So if you click on that, it's a King County website, and then go to the assessor. There's a list of all their options available for tax relief and how those things work. I'm not as familiar with that.
Okay, so that you don't get relief, but you're gonna pay it off later?
It defers it to the next owner, yeah. So.
Do you have any more online questions over there, Kelly? No?
Two. He hasn't gone yet.
Okay.
Ask your question.
Okay.
She's deferring
Oh,
to you.
thank you.
Yeah, he hasn't had a chance, so.
You brought up a lot of really interesting projects that are happening and exciting projects in the next few years. I know you talked about it a little earlier, but I was wondering if you can talk a little about your community engagement plan, how you're going to keep everyone educated about all these great things you're working on.
Jim would like to
He's
talk
gonna do
about
it.
that.
Jim, go ahead, by all means.
Well, we have a very
Here, Jim.
structured approach.
Our assistant city manager.
So we have a very structured approach because there's a lot of volume. So what we do is we try to put a cadence to it, or a schedule, and there's about 8 or 9 of them. So there's multiple channels. We start with the neighborhood associations. We go to the business community. We have an inclusion network we're building for nonprofits. So we like to go out, and you've been very kind to allow us to have the agendas almost till the end of the year. we have presentations. So coming to the neighborhood organizations, you'll see these presentations. One of the keys to it is we've put it in a video or digitized it so you can send it out through social media. We put it on our newsletter, and everything you need to know about where to go and what it's about is in a 4-minute video. So we've really tried to focus the communication to be efficient and to be as broad a distribution as we possibly can. And then what we like to do after we send those out is bring folks either into City Hall. We have a big meeting this Saturday, and then on the 22nd, we have the Sustainability Master Plan. We like to bring people in and then also go out into the community and meet people where they are. And we're very flexible about that. When we start these community engagement programs, we're out asking folks, do you want to have an interview? Do you want to have an on-site visit? Would you like to sponsor or organize a focus group? So that in the first wave, we like to touch everybody, get this video out, get people the information they need, and then be very flexible to have folks come in and then go out and see you. So please watch the newsletter, please watch the city's website, and if you are interested in any one of these programs, you'll have ample opportunity to come in and express your opinions.
City Update, weekly City Update is one place that introduces all of these and usually gives links. You know, if there's one you're particularly interested in, you can link on that and find out they're doing a survey, they're doing a workshop, whatever.
I will say a big thank you to the CAN group and all the neighborhood associations, because we really do use them as a foundation or a fundamental platform to get the word out.
So watch, you know, get on your neighborhood's email listserv too, if you aren't already.
To support the gentleman here and his concern, I believe it can't be a welcoming city, and then once you live here 10 years, we forget about you. So that's not a good message to send to the newcomers. So it's just like you come in here and, you know, if you're retired and your usefulness and you don't make money like these young people, then you gotta move out. I mean, you see what I'm saying? So it would not be like in the spirit of what I have seen in Kirkland up to this point. So it would be good if there is something that would help the older resident, whatever it is, you know, I mean.
I was retired, I had to go back to work to stay in Kirkland.
I've been here 40 years, they haven't forgot about me.
I'm never gonna forget about
Oh.
you.
And I feel supported too, right?
Oh, yes, 2 questions. So, regarding the,
Stand up and talk about that.
okay, so regarding the developers, is there any way that there could be an incentive for them so that they would be encouraged to not, so all of these developers want to build the biggest, you know, as much to the very corner, take down
Right.
all the trees, you know, make these high-end, and then, of course, the buyer would also be, you know, at that caliber. But I was wondering if there's like an incentive or some way that we could encourage, I don't know if there's some programs that are available for, well,
Smaller homes, right?
I'm sure, you know, so that there's smaller units and also, you know, maybe more traditional housing and some green space, you know, between, I mean, I know like the cottage developments, but to have them, you know, within the city rather than just everything the same style and the same box that's, you know, the trend now.
Yeah.
And then I had 2 questions, so I don't know if you want to respond to that one first.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we'd all like that, and we have talked about incentives or trying to build some way. You know, it's like Kurt and I met a couple weeks ago with some people who actually build affordable housing, and they build it in a way that uses affordable materials and we just don't have the kinds of projects that they can do at this point in time. It's tough because land is so expensive in the city of Kirkland. So for people to realize, whether it's a developer, I mean, you know, it generally doesn't start with a developer. It starts with somebody like me who has to sell their home because they're going to move into their forever home, right? And I need to get as much out of my property as I possibly can in order to afford that house that your family can't get to without all, because I think we had to go all the way to the limit on when we bought our forever house. So, yeah, I mean, we're there in spirit. We're not sure at this point. We actually had a meeting earlier today with our legislative group to talk about, is this the kind of thing that the legislature could potentially help us with when they come back next year?
Some kind of incentive or some patrons or, someone that is interested in that to actually,
We are
someone
trying.
who could actually live and work in the community.
So some of the theory, some of the theory of the work we're doing with the duplexes and triplexes is our hope is that rather than take down a small rambler, put up 3 single-family homes, boom, 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 making them all really large, is if you could have people build a triplex and leave the yard. Right, so we're trying to get at some of that, but as the mayor said, it's a series of decisions made by private sector people who are all trying to maximize their revenues for their own reasons, which are important to them. So it's hard.
Profit.
Yes.
Well,
But-
it's called being able to afford the next
Right,
house.
right.
Zoning were changed somehow where you could put maybe 2,000 square foot houses on a property
Right.
now that you can't do that. I mean, you can only go so far with that.
Right.
Because you do want to maintain
It's-
lot coverage
it's
and
rough
space, but some creativity about that in the proper.
So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the FAR discussions that have been going on this last year. It's floor area ratio, and that's one of the things that's really been discussed is how much house can be built and how to rate in that amount. And there's a specific ratio of how much house can be built on a certain lot. And they get added benefits for setbacks, and they get added benefits for doing basement and that sort of thing. So I think that's kind of how the city has tried to tackle some of the property line issues and to try and make it more friendly. But what we've discussed multiple times is you can't control people's style.
Right.
So there's no way to say, hey, you can't build a box. I will say that maybe you'll be happy to see that farmhouse is actually taking over the modern style. So you're gonna start seeing a lot different type of house that's more white.
Well, more size is what I'm thinking. So
Yeah.
two families could live, or,
Yeah.
the ADU is a possibility if they actually.
Which neighborhood are you in?
So I'm Northern.
Okay.
I'm just like a block from here,
Yeah.
so I'm close by.
So
Thanks for
we're
coming.
working on this right now,
Yes.
through this, and come to the workshop on the 19th, and
Right,
yourself
I
work
have
on
it
this
right now.
survey, good,
Yeah.
okay.
So you just confused me. I thought I knew it all, and you two just confused me. I thought the latest laws that were coming about were about to say that you can't build great big houses on lots anymore because we want more affordable housing. And you just agreed that the more barn style was coming in the.
It's a style
Style.
of home, it's not actually, it's not a home style, it's just the look of the outside.
Oh, it's not a
That's
lot.
right.
aesthetic.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you.
It's a more traditional looking house than the modern, sorry, yeah.
And I feel like the market is turning a little bit
Yeah.
towards, keeping smaller houses. I see more of them being maintained. Anyway, I don't want to take your time, though. Do you have a?
Yeah, we drag it on.
Ms. Gallen hasn't anything yet.
Oh, I'm sorry, regarding that, back to transportation. So the idea of having that, the electric going up to the
Mhm.
405 interchange, I was thinking it would be, could Metro, or I don't know if there's some way to get our own city bus that just kind of goes around?
Yes.
Like 100, like
That last mile thing.
all the time, and people would get on with their bags and go,
It could be elevated.
Oh, wouldn't you have?
Oh, taking the words right out of my heart. Gondolas.
Someone has been discussed too, not gondolas, but.
And it would actually be a better, in European cities, you're a little bit more into the community because you're not just getting in your car and going out of your garage and going to the store and going back into your garage, but you're, on the, interacting a little bit more. But anyway, more about less cars on the road, less traffic, and then, still functioning and giving up to the.
Well, I mean, one of the things that we are going to be talking about with the city of Redmond is going to be access to that, to the bus rapid transit station. Because a whole lot of the traffic coming up from Redmond is going to be coming up from Redmond. So that could be a time when we talk seriously about either buses that run back and forth back and forth all the time. We will, and I mean, Kurt is right. I mean, we're going to have to come up with something incredibly creative. And we've got a lot of minds really working on this in terms of how to get us connected to the connection, or to the trail and to Kirkland Urban. Because there's going to be so many people working at Kirkland Urban. What did I say?
Just say, you haven't. I was wondering if you were gonna talk about van sharing, which is already going on.
Yeah, that's happening in our parking lot.
Right. I mean, picking up people from their neighborhoods and taking them to a transit point.
Yes, that's essentially the summary right there. So so if we were able to get the transitway built by Sound Transit, which I think we're hoping we're going to be able to do, it's likely that the city of Kirkland would have to run the service. And so sometime in the next 4 years, we have to figure out what we would do and how we would do that. And that is one of the options we've explored, is we might extend it far beyond just doing something like that, especially if it's autonomous and it's electric, but even if it's not, creating some sort of local shuttle service. But as Janet was saying, right now, today, and again on our website, you can find out more about this, you can actually get a free, well, I think you have to use your Orca card, but a low-cost shuttle today, you can just call up, and we have vans around Kirkland who will come and pick you up and take you anywhere that you want to go. So we've been working really hard with Metro to find alternatives to just the fixed bus route systems as well. And we're going to keep doing that, even if we don't get to our own system anytime soon. It's for anyone. It's for anyone. Yeah, anyone. It's on.
Just a regular Orca pass.
Regarding her comment about a connector, the city of Nice in France has a V-shaped streetcar that goes from one area to the other continually. It's only a streetcar. I mean, we happen to see out, right? And it just connects everybody in the city of Nice to all the different shopping centers, and the tourists use it, and it's very exciting. And
I'm with you.
I still want my gondola.
Yeah.
There was you and one other person I saw right there, and then we're gonna thank
So
these guys.
is bus rapid transit, is that just a faster bus? Is that?
It's a more frequent service in dedicated lanes, and the buses are longer, and there's a whole other series of things, like basically being able to roll right on if you're in a wheelchair or something, so that you pay before you get on the bus, so you don't have the queue up that slows the bus down. So everything is designed to make it quick and act almost like a light rail system, where the buses just pull up, you get on, and you go. But it's dedicated lanes with frequent service.
Actually, we met this afternoon with Jay Arnold, who is working on that particular project for us. And they were able, just by planning inline stations, to knock another 12 minutes, I think, off of a trip. I mean, that's really important when you're doing those services, so.
And is that the same price, or?
It will be, yeah, just your Orca card.
is there any way to get it to the airport? Because it doesn't go there.
Well, it's going to go down to Burien, so I don't know where it's going to end. That's a great question. It goes all the way to 405, and it goes into Burien.
It's so easy to get to the airport, though.
Just get on the bus.
Right. I mean, right now, it's the 255. It'll probably be Bellevue through.
So I know it's going to connect Kirkland, the Bellevue Transit Center, which is going to have light rail to the airport, and you could also go all the way down, but
It's funner to
there'll
go-
be a way,
It's
yeah.
funner to go through
Guys, I'm
Capitol
gonna
Hill.
let's say goodbye to these guys and let them get home, but this has been.
Oh, thank you so
terrific
much for your
discussion.
questions. Great questions.
Thank you.